I won't live through something, or something terribly embarrassing will happen. I won't be able to deal with that. But you seem pretty secure that you were able to.
Well, I've been at it a long time, remember.
Strong
but when I was young, like you see, then I used to get all terribly upset and uptight about things. Mm-hmm. I didn't care anymore. What's the matter?
Yeah. We're talking today with Anna Russell, and to tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea how to describe you, how to introduce you. My introduction to Anna Russell was to go to Beckman Auditorium on Caltech University campus and to watch you charm a standing room only audience for an entire evening with Anna Russell. I don't know how to describe you other than the only thing that I've seen like it was some of the cult audiences that have built up from some of the rock stars that I have seen followed, as they are. I mean, because people were on your every word. A lot of them knew what you were going to say because they had heard your records and had heard your routine. How would you describe yourself? I mean, help me introduce.
Well, I've sort of worn people down over the years. When I first started this, of course, which was years long before you were born, I may say, classical music was not a subject for levity. I mean, one did not laugh about classical music.
It was very straight-laced.
It belonged to the mink coat and tiara gang.
Yes.
And it was for status purely. The mink coat and tiara gang do not appreciate music, except as they are sitting there being high muckamucks, you being seen at the symphony. But what they know about it, by and large, is nothing, you see. But nobody else could come because they hadn't got their mink coat and tiara and could only sit in the gods. So it was really belonged to this crew. And I followed on to a lady, I don't know whether you ever could have heard her records, Madam Florence Foster Jenkins. Did you ever hear of her?
No, not at all. You've introduced me to a whole new world.
Well, this was a real lady. She was actually a perfect darling, but she was terribly a grand social lady with heaps and heaps of money, fortunes of money, which she used to give to the Met. She was a great patron of the arts, and she was very elderly at this point. But she was also the president of the Verdi Society.
What's that?
The Verdi, Giuseppe Verdi Society,
okay.
Things. But she liked to sing, and at the meetings of the Verdi Society, she would insist upon singing, and she had a terrible voice. She had one good note, F in out. All the rest she sang in the cracks. And she'd get herself dressed up in most fancy costumes, most terrific costumes, and render the Queen of the Night arias, from that Magic Flute and all sorts of, the Bell Song from Lakme. And she had a perfectly marvellous accompanist called Cosme Mac Moon, and who was brilliant, you see. And she certainly turned into a cult. Everybody joined the Verdi Society, not that they cared a bit about Giuseppe Verdi. Yeah. What they wanted to do is hear Madame F.J. sing. So off they would go. And she was so hilarious that it was just a cult thing, like you were saying. Well, then she started to give town hall concerts. Well, up to that point, nobody would be allowed in town hall unless they were at least Rubinstein or somebody like that. And but they didn't dare refuse her because, you see, she might have cut off the money to the Met or all the things she was giving it to, you see. And so she started these things, and they were sellouts. And her last concert was at Carnegie Hall, and it is said to be the biggest Carnegie Hall seat sale that had ever been known. They were scalping the tickets, and they were queued up around the block to come in for standing room. And there she was, dressed up as an angel and all sorts of things, and singing all these terrible arias in the most they're not terrible, but in the most funny way. And she was such a mad success that she died of it, you see. Well, now, I'd just gone to New York at that point, you see, and I saw that concert, and I thought, well, now that is the only person on earth that's got a worse voice than I've got. So I think that's what I should do, you see. But one thing I didn't bargain for was, she was very rich, so of course she could do anything she liked, and she was considered dotty. you see, so she could get away with all this stuff. Well, I was not rich and I was not considered dotty, so I got into all sorts of trouble over this. How dare this awful woman make a mockery of great music? But bit by bit I wore them down, you see, and my lot that liked it, they came along, and my audience used to grow old along with me. And then I went to Australia for 8 years and everybody thought I was dead, and then I came back again. And I think what has resurrected itself is the grandchildren of my original audience.
I know, and I saw so many people there in the audience, young people who had your records, who wanted you to autograph your albums and to do this, and they had, and it was obvious that they were hanging on a lot of what you said. I was sitting in the audience, and when you were doing the parody on the Masonic opera, what is the name of the...
Magic Flute, yes.
The Magic Flute. So, and I have never heard of the Magic Flute, you know, and I had never heard the Magic Flute, so I didn't know so many of the references that you missed, but I would be sitting there and you would say something, the audience would die. And so I had a wonderful time living vicariously through the audience because they were having such a wonderful time.
Well, you see, that is exactly, that wasn't a parody, that's exactly what it was all about. It was a Masonic subliminal cell by Mozart to annoy the Pope. But nobody will admit it. If you look into it, that is exactly what it was done for.
Well, then what you have done is just taken another viewpoint of opera. You have taken. I'm trying to collect myself to see what I want to say. What I saw you do was to not take something that is taken very seriously and to look at it slightly askance and slightly from another viewpoint and to see the delight in what it was, and I had a wonderful time.
Well, I tried to see it like it is, you see, not like you're supposed to think it is, and there's a great difference in this.
We were talking about that earlier, like what our parents tell us that we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to feel.
All the rubbish you were told when you were young.
Oh, yes.
Because Mummy and Daddy said it had to be gospel, and if you really got your wits about you, found out jolly soon there was a whole lot of hooey. And then you had to find out for yourself exactly where it's at.
Mm-hmm. What about your childhood? Must have been incredible.
Oh, it was absolutely ridiculous. My father was in the British Army, and
a real British soldier, like I see in the movies and all.
Yes, and you see, he was over 40 when I was born, so he was one of Queen Victoria's glorious British Army fellows. And my grandfather rather, won the VC under the walls of Delhi. He was half a league onward into the jaws of death, rode the six, this kind of thing. And Father was born in 1862, and he was a real mid-Victorian papa. Mm-hmm. And are you watching Edward? The
no,
series?
but
well, Queen Victoria, she was a wicked old bitch, she really was. But you couldn't say that if you were British, you wouldn't dare. But of course it comes to light, she was an awful old woman.
Yeah.
And those sort of things. And of course I had to be brought up like a proper mid-Victorian.
Yeah, but my intuition tells me you were a strong-minded young woman as you were growing up. You didn't just suddenly blossom.
No, well, I wasn't as strong-minded as Father, because Father was, you didn't ever argue with Father. And I did exactly what Father said until Father died, and then I went whizzing off.
Where did you whiz off to?
Well, I went to one of those women's detention camp boarding schools in England, where you play cricket and hockey and have a Dutch cut and freeze to death and get adenoids and colds in the head. It was just awful. Terribly expensive, but very rugged. They bring you up sort of all the same Eton and Harrow. They bring up the girls to be as near as close to the boys as possible, tough and muscular.
Strong.
And then at 16 they're taken home, and the ma and papa look at this monster with muscles and pimples and things, and then they say, this will never do, and then you're sent to Europe to a finishing school where you're taught to be a nice young lady and do all the sort of cutie boots things, you see, which you're not very successful at usually. And then you go home, and then you're a debutante. I was a debutante at the last court of King George V with my 3 feathers and sort of doing your year And so forth. Then Father picked out a suitable husband for me, because he said, you can marry that fellow because his father is a bishop, and with the army goes the church. And if you're an army brat, you marry a church brat. And so I married the church brat and stuck married to the church brat until Father died, and then I took off. By that time I was 25.
25. Did you know you wanted to get into entertaining, Anna Russell?
No, I didn't. No, I wanted to be a great opera singer, you see. But what like I told you, all you need to be an opera singer is a glorious voice. If you haven't got a glorious voice, you can be the most intelligent person on earth. You can be the greatest musician, the greatest genius. You can know every note of every opera, but you will never be an opera singer.
Yeah.
But and having
and that was, and an opera singer at that time would have been the top of the entertainment business, or what we would have considered to be. I mean, how was it
in my youth?
That's
yes,
what I'm talking about. In your youth, how was being an opera singer perceived by your peers? So we can understand what the consciousness was.
Those days, you see, that was before radio, it was before television, and like I told you the other night, everybody had those gramophones with the huge horns, you know, and one-sided Caruso records going. That's about all we had. Movies had got about as far as Charlie Chaplin and you know, Perils of Pauline. There was vaudeville, which I was never allowed to go to because Father said it was vulgar and only fit for the servants. So I never could go there. So there really was no entertainment. And at that point, those were the days of like Paderewski and Galli-Curci and Rachmaninoff and all those people, you see. And they weren't a bit like concert artists today. They were more like Liberaces.
Yeah.
They were all very full of personality. I don't remember what they played or sang, but I remember them. They were, and they were really the top of the heap. They'd spend their lives drinking champagne and going to the south of France.
The glorious, glamorous lives.
They were the glorious, glamorous people in those days. Of course, the stage was, in a way, but it hadn't got the reclame, it hadn't got the grandeur of the opera.
So opera, and this was what in your heart you wanted to do.
Oh yes, I wanted to, because you see, my father's aunt who brought him up was one of the original Wagnerian sopranos. She was a friend of Wagner's, and Father was taken there when he was a young boy, and so that to me was utter glamour. And I was taken when I was about 7 to meet all these people. I've shaken hands with Caruso and Galli-Curci and all these people, you see. And so that was what I wanted to do, but no way, you see.
Well, you have, I mean, what appears to me, am I just unschooled, but it appears to me that you have a beautiful voice.
No, I've got a very loud noise, but it's all in the wrong place. You see, I'm really baritone. I shouldn't be baritone. I should be right screeching up here, but I can't do that.
Yes.
Because I did have a very good voice until when I was at school, somebody bashed me over the face with a hockey stick and broke my nose and ruined my acoustics. So I've got a lot of power, but I've got no resonance in the right places.
I see. And you've done, and then, you know, I wanted to talk to you a little about because right now we're on an entertainment.
Well, let's talk about you for a change.
Well, we can, but we're talking about me in this way because I'm learning an incredible amount from you. What we're having...
Well, I hope you are. I hope I'm not teaching you
yes,
should know.
I hope so. I mean, this to me is like a 30-minute. I mean, to be able to sit down with an entertainer, that you have done so much entertaining, and that's what I want to do, because entertaining is something. It's a delightful way to spend my life, entertaining.
Yeah.
And delightful. It's good for my soul for whatever karmic reasons there are, but. When you were on, so you have done the same thing that I'm doing here. You know, I'm sitting here in an interviewer. You were an interviewer. You began and did a lot of your work in live interviewing.
Yes.
And this is the type of spontaneousness that we're trying to achieve here.
Yes. As a matter of fact, years ago, myself and another fellow, we were the first ad-lib program on the Canadian network. You know, up to that, every comma was scripted. But somebody in NBC in New York had an ad-lib show. I think it was the Fitzgerald's Breakfast Club. I think that's what it was. And so then they sent all kinds of people into the studio and said, you talk to so-and-so. And so I was talking to so-and-so and said, you're it, Monday through Friday, which was very nerve-wracking. But I had a very funny fellow called Sid Brown. And he was really humorous, but he had the most terrible trick. He was one of those silent gigglers. You know those sort of people. It's all right on television because you can see what they're up to, but on radio,
Sure.
you know, he'd break himself up and he'd go, you know, and not
And
a
you'd have
sound
no-
would
yeah.
come out, and I'd have to keep talking while he's, you know, what on earth, you know, yakety yak, and so that really was frightfully good practice for me while he sort of got over his paroxysm, was completely silent. That was probably good practice for my ad-lib talking.
Sure. You know, when you went down to Australia, I was reading in your biography, and you played one of my favorite roles. I mean, I know so little about theater,
Yeah.
but I did because I saw my mother play this role, and she was very good in it. Madame Arcady in Blithe
Oh,
Spirit.
did your mother play that?
Yeah, and such a...
What is it? Is your mother...
No, and she did some professional theater
Yes.
and did it in Pittsburgh and in
Yes.
Chicago,
Oh,
but had not. But that
yeah.
was to see her play that role and to see
Yeah.
the play was delightful. It appears to me that like right now, and I see your delight and I see what you're doing. How come you're not all over television here?
Well, of
in
course, my big
situation
ambition
comedies
is to
and-
replace sort of the Margaret Rutherfords of this life. I
Yes.
think because you see, the thing is, there aren't many of these crazy old women left. There used to be heaps. There used to be like Edna May Oliver, there was Marie Dress, there was Alison Skipworth, there was oh heavens, you know, what's a Marjorie Main, of course Margaret Rutherford and so forth, and they're all gone, and nobody is taking their places, because my theory is that once you've had it all facelifted, you're not going to be much of an old lady. And that's why I went to Australia, because my manager said, you look a mess. And if you don't have your face lifted and lose 50 pounds, I'm not going to book you any longer. So I said, well, too bad for you, Buster, and went to Australia and sat it out for 8 years until I was past praying for face lifting. And why do it anyway? Because I was never any oil painting when my face was up where it started from. And I think it takes all the character out, don't you?
Oh, well, I'm 30 right now, so I'm in my first year of my third decade. So I'm not there yet. I'm just beginning to feel the receding hairline and do the little
heavens.
things. So I'm not worried about it. I'm pretty happy with what's happening
Well,
and just letting
you're
it.
only just a child. you
Wow, but I'll see. So what can you tell me? Because like right now, I see you. I mean, you have a complete career of the parts that you could play. What are you going? Or do you have anything that you would particularly like to do with situation comedy or?
Well, I'd love to be in a situation comedy. I really would. I did an awful lot of that in Australia, because see, in Australia you've got to do everything. You can't sort of specialise. There aren't that many people.
Yeah.
So I not only did my show, I spent a year as your Southern Hemisphere Madame Armfelt in a little night music. And we did,
What was that?
didn't you see a little night music?
No.
Oh, yes. Who did it here? Hermione Gingold did it here on Broadway, and Margaret Hamilton did it on the road.
I'm frightfully ignorant of these things.
Well, actually,
Not been exposed to them.
Well, I think you'd enjoy it. It's a musical, and I think you could describe it as the importance of being earnest of the whorehouse set. And of course, I've done a lot of Lady Bracknells, if you know the importance of being earnest. Do you know that one?
Yes, I do.
And we did a revival of Harvey, and I had my own radio program, and I was on a pornographic soap opera. We had a pornographic soap opera down there called Alvin Purple.
Alvin Purple.
Alvin Purple it was called. And it was
I think you're going to be giving some television executives that would watch the program some ideas from this, so continue.
Well, Alvin Purple was about this young sort of teenage boy who was absolutely phenomenally sexy. Well, he was terrified of women and everything, but he just was sexy, and everybody fell for him, you see. And then he got taken on by some marriage counsellors to sort of loosen up people. And, oh, I'll never forget, he had one old Spencer that came, and they got a waterbed, and she got spurs on, and she God, and it turned into a swimming pool. It was so funny. But I was the grandmother in that one, because my granddaughter, who was a very brilliant pianist, I thought was tight, and I wanted her to get together with Alvin Purple to loosen her up so she could play the piano a bit better.
Yes. I saw, when I was in Japan, I saw a lot of the Australian entertainers that would make the Far East circuit, you know,
Oh, yes,
and do
that was
this.
a great place. We used to do that all the time.
I saw some exciting people and some exciting entertainers. So a lot of interesting things are happening down there. How do you compare from what you see on the tube here on television? I don't want to say compare. What are you seeing right now?
Well, you do the same sort of thing, only upside down. You see, here, when you go on tour, you go on tour the United States and Canada, you go to England and so forth. Down there, you go to New Guinea, you go to South Africa, you go to Japan, you go to sort of all sorts of little places round there. It's the same sort of thing. And the television sort of roughly quite similar.
Do you watch television here?
Oh, yes, I watch
What do you
everything.
watch?
I watch everything.
What do you enjoy watching?
Everything.
You like television, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
I watched Old Acquaintance with Betty Davis last night. I love Betty Davis. I think she's marvelous.
Of the people that you admire, are there any people what is it that, other than doing and continuing your entertainment, you know, one of the things that I've most enjoyed about this is the ability to meet people just like yourself.
Well, that's really what's fun. You know, traveling around, touring around is so much fun.
Yeah.
So
you don't mind being on the road?
Oh, I love it. When I very first went, of course it was a bit lonely when you first go when you're young and nobody knows you. But I've been going for so many years, there's nowhere in the United States that I haven't been, and somebody doesn't turn up that I knew 20 years ago. It's the most tremendous fun.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sort of old glad hand, that should call me.
When people come back after you're like, I was watching the people troop backstage, you know, with their albums in hand for autographs and all this afterwards. What is that? That must be an incredible feeling.
Oh, yes, it's great fun, but most of them I've met before, I know.
And the people that you've known.
Yes, and the new ones. I had a lovely one in Boston. I was in Boston last year, and a little tiny fellow, about 10 years old, came, a little plump boy of 10, and he got his record, you see, and he said, my granny told me I had to come tonight. And I said, oh, did she? That's nice. Why? He said, well, you're my granny's favourite entertainer. I said, oh, is that so? And he said, yes. He said, I didn't want to come. And so I said, oh, I'm sorry. And he said, well, you see, I don't like what Granny likes. But he said, I'm glad I did come. You really are a funny old lady.
You haven't, you know, you're being 67 years old, and you don't mind being 67 years old. I mean, you've dealt with that, and you've dealt with it with such class. I mean, how come? How come you've been able to discover this? What is it?
Well, for one thing, I've got an aunt who's 92, and she rode a bicycle till last year, so by comparison. None of my father's family have yet died a natural death. They were all in the army, except the sister, and they were all shot in various wars. And I've got one of 96 who still breeds pointers and setters and keeps bees, and the aunt of 92 who's just been forbidden by her doctor to ride any more bicycles, and a very spiffy one who rushes all over the world to geophysical meetings, who's 85.
Tremendous characters. You have so many delightful
all characters,
people.
all mad as March hares. That's what they say. My father's a Royal Engineer, and that's what in England they say Royal Engineers are all mad, married, or Methodist.
Mad, married, or Methodist. How did you decide, Anna? What was it that made you decide to be who you were and to say to hell with what all the things, I've got to find out who it is I am and let that come forth, because it's very evident that that this is what's coming forth?
Well, I think it was very simple. You see, I was trying to be such a glorious singer, and every time I'd get up, when I was at the Royal College of Music for many years, every time I'd get up to do my piece, everybody'd laugh and scream and think it was hilarious, and my feelings would get hurt.
It did? It must have devastated you.
Well, finally I got expelled. The director said he'd been here for 3 years, and he said, every term you get more stupid and ridiculous. And he said, we have no room for students who do not take their work seriously, and if you think you're as funny as you think you are, why don't you go and try the Palladium? But out, you see. Well, that was it. I mean, I just wasn't for it. And so I suddenly thought, if that's going to be the reaction to everything I do, I'll just keep on doing it, and if they laugh, good.
Yeah. How were you perceived by the people around you? How did they see you?
They all thought I was an idiot.
Even your friends? I mean,
Well, I think everybody thought I was doing it on purpose. I wasn't, in fact. But there was just something wrong with the cut of my jib or something. But I never could keep anything going at all serious for more than 2 minutes before somebody would think it was ridiculous or out of line or something.
Have you worked on, I talk with this a lot with some of my guests because I know that I have a death coming up and all of us are going to be doing it. Have you thought about your own death and how you've dealt with this and, you know, the death that you've experienced in your family?
I intend to die and pip up the other side and go whizzing on.
Just continue on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah? All right.
Oh, yes, I'm sure everybody reincarnates and probably has to do the same old things over again they haven't done last time.
Exactly. I feel that's exactly the feeling from my meditation and the things that I'm getting. These are the same feelings that I've been intuiting so strong within me, and it's good to feel the same thing coming from you.
Absolutely, yes.
Sure, that's beautiful. What else can we talk about, Anna Russell?
Well, let's talk about you.
Yes?
Let's talk about, now, do you have, you say you're into this, into the theatre and things. So do you have a routine? Do you have your own routine?
Oh, no. Stand-up comedy frightens me.
But that's it. That it's very useful. Even if you are going to only be an actor, get some little routine up that you can do all by yourself. Because I've noticed this. I noticed it when I was an interviewer. I don't know whether you've noticed it. You can interview some terribly great actor or actress, and when they are not there with their script, they are so dumb on an interview. My goodness. And so if you've got a little act that you can pip off, it sort of starts you going. Sure. Haven't you noticed that, though?
Yeah, and this was the thing that so amazed me when I came out here, was that I would see an actor or an actress on television doing a beautiful, sensitive role, and I'd go, I have to meet that person. And then when I meet them, I find that because you're able to play this beautiful and sensitive role does not mean that you would also be a beautiful and sensitive person. And this really.
But if you write your own beautiful and sensitive act, that's all part of you see.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you write your own beautiful and sensitive act and learn it and know exactly the timing and so forth. And when you get an interview, just feel it. Well, I'm always saying the same things to everybody. They always think I'm just making it up, but I'm not. I know exactly what I'm going to talk about, but I've done it so often. Yeah. And I think you'll find it a great help. Mm-hmm. It gets that sort of self-consciousness if you've got 2 or 3 things that you've got.
Well, but what I'm trying for, and especially like on the program on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation, is to get whatever it is inside of me, like we were talking about before with improvisational comedy and doing this, and having it come spontaneously forward, whatever it is, we work without a net, we go with no notes here.
Well, now, do you come spontaneously comic, or do you come spontaneously serious, or do you come dramatic, or what? Because everybody doesn't come spontaneously the same thing, do they? So what do you come spontaneously as?
I don't know yet.
Somebody come spontaneously very serious.
Yeah. Either way, whatever way it goes, it's going to just come out.
Yes. And what you feel comfortable at, isn't it? Really?
Comedy.
Yes.
I feel comfortable. There's something about making people laugh. There's something about sharing that experience of laughter that does something to me.
Yes, laughter is a total emotion. I mean, if you're laughing, you can't be feeling anything else. You can't be peeved, and you can't have a headache, and you can't do. If you're really having a good belly laugh, that's it, and that's total.
You're right, totally right there.
It's the opposite of total love, I think. Total laughter, nothing else has got any room.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in love?
Oh, I thought I was.
Love.
I don't know. When I was young, not for a long time.
Well, we were told, you see, in the book that I'm writing, that was one of the things that I'm dealing with, was I was told how I was supposed to feel when I was going to fall in love, whatever. So all this time I'm waiting for some feeling of falling in love. It never came. Love was something else, and I've discovered what love is, and I've been able to do that.
But it hits you you can't feel I'm going to laugh at any moment. You can't feel I'm going to have a terrific humorous experience.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.